Hi, I'm Dane, and these are Balanced Body Podcasts. We're at my studio, North Star Pilates Solutions in Buffalo, New York, and this is Nancy, and Nancy's going to be demonstrating for us some leg work laying on the box. The best way to kind of develop some awareness of hip and knee in space is to kind of take an athlete out of their normal environment and put them in one they're not used to, and that kind of gives them the awareness of how to build positioning and alignment of their lower extremity in space, and it'll kind of give them the template to move them back into their normal environment to kind of use that stability that they acquire. So this side lying position is one of those ways to kind of get them out of their normal environment and put them in a more challenging scenario. So what I'm going to have Nancy do is just straighten out her top leg here. Good. So just making sure their alignment is right on the box. So you want their hips and shoulders to be stacked one on top of the other. And then you want this leg to be hovering roughly parallel to the ground. They can go a little bit higher or a little bit lower depending on what's comfortable for their hip joint. The movement is just inhaling and sweeping that leg forward and front. Good. And then exhaling and pulling back. So the challenge here becomes keeping that leg parallel or holding the leg in whatever starting position you choose while it's traveling through that range of motion. So we're working on lateral hip stability here, as well as flexibility of hamstring and mobilization of that hip joint. As far as the upper body goes, you want to keep the shoulders stacked one on top of the other, and you can see Nancy supporting her head with her hand, which is perfectly fine. You want some support underneath the head. You don't want the head hanging in space. So any of the variations we do on this in this particular movement, we can do with a neutral hip, external rotation at the hip, or internal rotation at the hip. Depending on what you're working on with your athlete, you may want to do one, you may not want to do the other. That's up to you. Right? So what I'm going to have Nancy do is go into some circles now. So she's going to bring her leg forward into hip flexion, and then take the leg into abduction up to the ceiling, and then pull that leg back down and around. Good. And just continue with that circle for me. So this circle, the range of motion depends on the flexibility of the hip of your athlete. This is a fantastic exercise to develop range of motion, but at the same time, because you're in a loaded situation, you want to make sure that the athlete is not going beyond the range that they're comfortable using. Good. And pause there, reverse direction for me. So bring the leg up, around in front, and then pull the leg back. Always kind of keeping the idea of length through that leg and stability through center. Good. And one more time for me, please. Good. So up and around, and straighten that leg out. Bend the knee and just pause here for just a second. Good. So whenever you're on the side body, you always want to, again, make sure that the hips and shoulders stay stacked. A great way to keep that connection is through the abdominals. So as the athlete is going through the movement, always cue that connection of rib cage to pelvis with the abdominals so that the grounding of the pelvis is attached to the grounding of the upper body and shoulders. So we're going to do one more variation, and it's called a bicycle. So I'm going to have Nancy straighten out that top leg again. Reach it nice and long. And there are two variations, two directions. So I'm going to have her go into hip and knee flexion first, pulling her knee up toward her chest. Then extend that leg out in front and sweep that leg nice and long. Good. So bend and extend and reach. So the bending of the knee with the extending and the reaching is getting that slightly different stability at the hip. So with the knee bent and hip bent, we're working a little bit more on deep rotators of the hip, and then to extend the leg and pull back, we're accessing hamstrings and glutes. Great hip strengthening exercise, great alignment exercise for lower extremity. Pause and reverse direction. So now she's going to lengthen the leg long, sweep that leg forward, bend the knee, and come around. Good. So Nancy's choosing to go just a little bit below parallel to the hip, and that's completely fine. Again, you can stay parallel, slightly below, slightly above, depending on what you're working on. Good. And bend that knee for me, please. Good. And just pause right there. Right. You can bend the knee. Yep. Thanks. So this is lower extremity exercise and variations in side lying on the box on the reformer. Great exercise, again, for lateral hip strengthening and also lower extremity alignment. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.